Yo, what's up guys? Teacher Paul here, and today we are reacting to how Norway controls the world and nobody notices. This is such a catchy title. The thumbnail is Quiet Ruler. So this is pretty interesting. It feels like Norway is taking over the world and nobody knows about it. This is the thumbnail, Quiet Ruler. This is so interesting. This was a coffee request by Whiplash, and Whiplash says, I know you have reacted to similar videos about Norway's economy, but this was posted yesterday, so it might be more up to date. And the channel also sits at 15 million subscribers. So shout out to this channel, the Infographics Show. The link is in the description if you want to check it out without my commentary. But let's see how Norway is controlling the whole world without anybody noticing. And if you want to request a video, go over to Buy Me Coffee, like and subscribe to the channel, and let's go and learn a little bit about Norway economy.
There's a single fund in the world that controls immeasurable amounts of wealth, shares in 9,000 international companies, real estate in top destinations, and stakes in countries and companies it continues to accrue interest on. Even scarier, this fund is under the control of a single nation. Is it China? Is it the US? What if we told you it was a country of 5.5 million people? And lots of snow. That's right, we're talking about Norway. On today's episode of the Infographic Show, we're going to explore how this small Scandinavian country controls the world and flies under the radar while doing so. Norway is widely known as being one of the most prosperous, democratic, and happy places on Earth, with a great quality of life for its citizens to boot. How did it get that way, and how does it enable it to control the world? In the mid-1900s, Norway was thriving, enjoying stability and a strong economy, something it had maintained for nearly 150 years since the end of the Napoleonic Wars, with one small exception during World War II. At the time, Norway had a healthy timber and fishing industry, combined with rapid industrialization that started in the late 19th century. But something
Timber. If I tell you, like when I went to Norway, I saw so many trees and very specific trees. It's crazy. Like you guys have so many, like honestly, when I was landing on the plane, I saw this like vast dude, like it's a beautiful sight.
happened in 1969 that would change the course of the country forever. Petroleum companies around the world thought that there might be valuable resources lurking in the Norwegian continental shelf. More specifically, oil. SO did find some oil at a site called Balder in 1967, but the deposit wasn't economically viable. Then
In fact, the Norwegian trees are what also helped me with GeoGuessr. We were playing GeoGuessr like every single day last month. And every time I saw those specific trees, I don't know what type of trees they are, but it's not pine trees or anything like that, but it looks like Christmas trees, right? And I heard you guys send trees to where do you send it every year? To the UK, right? Every year.
in 1969,
Norway spruce, okay. Beautiful. And because of that specific tree, I always know we're landing in Norway in GeoGuessr.
oil. SO did find some oil at a site called Balder in 1967, but the deposit wasn't economically viable. Then in 1969, while exploring another section of the shelf, Phillips Petroleum got an early Christmas gift: oil. And not just any oil. The discovery of Ekofisk turned out to be one of the largest offshore oil fields ever found. By June 15, 1971, drilling was underway. But how much would this actually benefit Norway? Wouldn't Phillips just walk away with most of the profits? Not so fast. Before granting any drilling permits, Norway's head of state, Einar Gerhardsen, made a brilliant move. In May 1963, he declared that the Norwegian government had sovereignty over the Norwegian continental shelf. That meant that any natural resources found there belonged to the state, not to foreign corporations. Clearly, the Norwegian people agreed with his decisions, as he was elected prime minister of the country a total of 4 separate times, the longest-serving non-monarch leader in Norway's history. Foreign companies still had plenty of incentive to invest and develop the oil fields. They would still take home about half half of the profits from Norway's massive oil supply, just not all of it. To keep control of its resources, Norway established a national energy company called Statoil, now known as Equinor. The government still holds a 67% majority stake in the company, ensuring that Norway, not foreign corporations, manage its vast oil reserves and other energy sources like hydrocarbons. Norway leveraged Statoil to secure 50% state participation in every single production license granted to petroleum companies. Why should Esso and BP executives be the only ones profiting from Norway's resources? The Norwegian government made sure that if oil was being drilled, it wouldn't just make foreign corporations rich, it would enrich Norway itself, and by extension, the Norwegian people. And that brings us...
That is the most logical thing to do. Because why would you just give away your resources just like that?
To Norway's current status as a quiet powerhouse, a secret controller and investor in much of the world.
Though you guys, Norwegians are so smart.
Like partial privatization and the government directly investing in oil field development in exchange for a share of the profits, one thing remains constant: oil still makes Norway an insane amount of money.
But not
How
only
much, you ask? As of
oil.
December 2024, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund was standing at around 20 trillion kroner, or $1.8 trillion. For a country of 5.5 million people, the U.S., for example, made about $244 billion from oil in 2023. But the U.S. also has 61 times the population of Norway.
Oh
the
my
Norwegian
goodness.
government then made one.
What? Look at the comparison here. That is tenfold. Dude. 1.8 trillion versus 244 billion. Dang. That is crazy. Crazy. What is the capita per capita in Norway? Do you guys know? Dang. And things are only gonna get better for Norway, right? I like with the whole sanctions and stuff that's going on, that favors Norway, doesn't it?
The U.S. also has 61 times the population of Norway. The Norwegian government then made once again a very smart decision. They did not want to be subject to the unstable highs and lows that, depending on a one-resource industry like oil, can create in an
That's
economy.
what I was saying.
They also didn't want to fall prey to the resource curse, an issue that affects many countries in which precious metals and resources are discovered.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. You know, that's the saying.
Resource curse is
don't put all your eggs in one basket.
That affects many countries in which precious metals and resources are discovered. The resource curse is the tendency of resource-rich nations to fall into political instability, economic inequality, corruption, or outright poverty. This happens when profits create an oligarchy, confining the wealth to the elite, when government corruption erodes democracy and leads to authoritarian rule, or when foreign exploitation drains the country's resources for outside benefit. And sometimes nations hit the worst-case scenario, suffering from all three at once. But Norway had something going
Many
for it,
African
something
countries
it was going to exploit to take control of companies throughout the world. It was already a pretty rich country, and more than that, it already had a very strong democracy in place. So the state developed smart ways to smooth the economic highs and lows of oil, while making Norway one of the wealthiest countries in the world. The Government Pension Fund. It may sound like a bureaucratic organization that gives senior citizens their retirement checks, but it's actually one of the wealthiest and simultaneously most intelligently run operations the world has ever known. The Government Pension Fund is split into two entities: Government Pension Fund Global and Government Pension Fund Norway. The latter concerns itself mostly with domestic investments in big Norwegian companies and functions a bit like a national insurance fund. But the Government Pension Fund Global, otherwise known as GPFG, that's where Norway holds the real power, because it is the single largest investor in the world. Though the fund rarely has a majority stake in companies, it holds at least a small stake in today's most important international corporations, at least 9,000 of them. The fund is operated by the central bank, Norges Bank. The Ministry of Finance creates its investment strategy, while the Norwegian Parliament has created a framework for investments and studies potential changes to the framework. But at the end of the day, the fund is owned by the people of Norway, and those people are sitting on a gold mine, or rather an oil mine. The GPFG is so massive, it now holds around 1.5% of all shares in international companies.
Whoa.
But it's not just about stocks. While 70% of the fund's value is invested in global equities, 25% is in bonds, with the rest spread across real estate and energy infrastructure. Some of its biggest holdings include Microsoft at $41 billion, Apple at $35 billion, and Nvidia India at $34 billion. But that's just the beginning. The fund also has significant stakes in Eli Lilly and Company, JP Morgan Chase, ExxonMobil, Alphabet, Google's parent company, Amazon, Meta, Tesla, and Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, just to name a few. Not only that, but the fund...
What about Tesla? Like, I was gonna say all of these companies are like safe companies, but Tesla right now is in crisis. Do you think they're gonna start selling, or I don't know? One thing that is totally unrelated, but they were talking about the fund, but it's totally unrelated. But I'm actually curious about is what happened during 2020. I'm not gonna mention the name, but the lockdown, right? What happened during that period? Because here in the UK, we had people, help us out. In Brazil, it was horrible. In Italy, I don't think they did anything to help the population. But what about Norway? I wonder like what you guys received as, as benefits or as government support. Because I know that your government really, really helps you guys. So I was wondering what happened during that period and how did they benefit you and how did they support you, so that nobody would leave their houses and stuff like that and not need to work and stuff like that.
Not only that, but the fund has been performing better than ever due to strategic investments and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which sent gas prices
That's what I was
soaring.
talking about.
It doubled in value from 2019 to 2024. Norway's sovereign wealth
Still
fund now
growing.
generates an annual return of around 6.3%, making it better at investments than most Wall Street hedge funds, which averaged an annual return of 5% during the 2010s. Right now, the value of Norway's sovereign wealth fund translates to $321,000 for every person, including children living in Norway. Norway
Dang.
isn't just a passive investor either, sitting back like some 90-year-old former CEO on a yacht and watching its stocks rise in value. It prides itself on taking a very active part in investor meetings, votes, and encouraging the shaping of corporate policy. According to Tufts University, it's considered to be one of the world's most transparent sovereign wealth funds and with the best corporate governance. And the GPFG ensures that its principles are upheld by voting in accordance with them on shareholder boards. So why isn't Norway's sovereign wealth fund making headlines like, for example, Kuwait's or Saudi Arabia's? After all, it dwarfs these other more highly covered funds like Qatar's, worth $526 billion, and even China's, worth only $1.35 trillion compared to Norway's $1.8 trillion.
Whoa.
Well, one reason may be that Norway's investments are...
Speaking about China, right now China is on the rise because of iShowSpeed. He's in China right now and showing everything with no filter, just showing the whole country. And a lot of people are changing their POV of the country itself. A lot of people are seeing how technological it is and how advanced they are. It's crazy how things are going on. And I mentioned iShowSpeed. I just remembered he didn't do much good to Norway's public image, did he, when he went there? Yeah, that's a tough thing. I also reacted to that. But then he went back. He said he would never go back, but then he went back, which is so unfortunate because I feel like, that's just speed. But right now he is in China. So yeah, I just remembered that like a lot of people are traveling to China now, right now. He fixed it. Yeah, he went back.
Trillion. Well, one reason may be that Norway's investments are more transparent. The fund publishes information on...
But it wasn't Norway's fault. It was just a few rotten apples, just a few rotten apples. And back then, Speed wasn't doing as much live streams IRL like he is now. Like everybody knows that there needs to be everybody knows now how to behave.
One reason may be that Norway's investments are more transparent. The fund publishes information on its portfolio value, the companies it has investments in, the percent of capital and voting rights it has in any particular company, and therefore it doesn't have mysterious, opaque, sometimes questionable natures that other sovereign wealth funds are known for, meaning it attracts less speculation and media frenzy, despite its massive influence. Another reason is trust. Unlike other sovereign wealth funds that might raise eyebrows, Norway's fund is seen as activist for the right reasons. The GPFG is run by a board that constantly reviews investments to make sure they're not running afoul of their own
That's the
ethical
most
guidelines
important part.
regarding sustainability and human rights. Though, as seen with big corporate stock investments already mentioned, this guideline doesn't lead to perfectly ethical investing. Investing in massive corporations in general makes that exceedingly hard. It does make Norway more discerning than most with its money. For example, the fund's board decided in 2010 that 17 tobacco companies would be excluded from potential investments due to their incredibly negative and obvious effects on public health,
Wow.
i.e. they sell death sticks and it's not cool. Rio Tinto was excluded in 2008 after several concerning incidents in its past, including the dumping of 1 billion tons of mine waste into rivers in Papua New Guinea. The result was fully contaminated water and land, something the locals definitely did not ask for.
See, this is why I'm asking about Tesla, because it could be that something happens and Norway just decides to drop them as well because of these guidelines. And guys, honestly, Norway, never change. Please keep your ethics. Please keep, your intelligence, investments, and you're honest, and just keep doing what you're doing, because I still have hope because other countries are being corrupted and just losing their essence. Please don't change. I need hope. When I look at Norway and I see you guys being honest and fighting against corruption and stuff like that, just being humble, that is something that is very heartwarming. Because when I see at my country's current state, I'm like, dang it, we could be world leaders if only we had less corruption. But anyways, that's a story for another time.
Walmart was excluded in 2006 for systematically violating human rights, something many shoppers who have seen the pain behind the eyes of the average Walmart greeter always assumed to be the case. Things like breaking international laws regarding child labor, health and safety, blocking unionization, and underpaying women didn't help Walmart's case for being an ethically responsible company either. Companies like Lockheed Martin are also off the list for producing nuclear weapons, as is Boeing for producing nuclear weapons. Some of these companies like Walmart and Rio Tinto were reinstated a decade later.
And there was a recent Boeing scandal also. Did you guys hear that in the news about Boeing and all the parts that they were using and stuff like that? There was like a whole thing, and then the whistleblower ended up, yeah, a lot of things were going on. Crazy stuff. The whistleblower just mysteriously passed away. Like a lot of crazy stuff from Boeing.
Also off the list for producing nuclear weapons, as is Boeing for producing nuclear weapons. Some of these companies like Walmart and Rio Tinto were reinstated a decade later after supposedly changing their working conditions and getting reassessed by the fund. The Norwegian fund believes that by sticking to its guidelines, it can also encourage better corporate governance, transparency, and more ethical practices overall in the companies hoping for its investments. And the fund is active. According to 2024 records, GPFG voted at over 11,000 shareholder meetings, voting at a rate of 97%. In addition to showing up at the general shareholder meetings, the fund also arranged separately 3,300 meetings with companies that they were invested in to chat about things they were concerned about or wanted to change. This included issues like board members having industry expertise, unfortunately not a given in today's corporate world, being independent from CEOs, and respecting the environment and human rights. Given that it's still invested in Exxon, it doesn't seem like the GPFG always gets what it wants, but if it tries sometimes, it can get executive boards to take its concerns seriously. However, the GPFG is also pretty proactive. The fund publishes position papers that clarify how it'll vote in the future, sending a clear message to the corporations it's invested in that this is what we will and will not support. Act accordingly. And once again, the general public doesn't pay much attention because Norway's fund tends to take positions that align with common sense. For example, one paper from the fund argued that CEOs shouldn't receive bonuses based on short-term, artificially inflated performance. Instead, their rewards should be tied to long-term value creation and sustainable growth. That's a stance most people can easily get behind. Norway also holds...
Yeah, and it also keeps the people active, right? Like not only, oh, I did one thing. No, they have to fight for it. I think that's That's very fair. And what about this is unrelated, but the politicians, like how much do you guys earn? I mean, the politicians, how much do politicians earn to do the job? Because in my country, if you want to get rich, become a politician. That's the best paying jobs are in politics, which I find that it's so wrong, because I think politics and politicians should do it because they really want to see a change in the country, not because they want to get rich, you know. And a very smart thing to do would be like to reflect the people's salaries with the politicians' salaries, because if what the politicians are earning is similar to what the people are earning, then the politicians will try to make it very close to what they want to be earning. Like they will put themselves in the positions of the people. Like let's say the minimum wage is something like um, the maximum is $100K, $100K with some benefits. I think you can get that. Let's say the minimum wage is 1,500 in Brazil. You can get, like, if you are let's say if you're a mayor, I think you can get 50K per month, or 70K, or even 100K plus a month, which is 100 times more than the minimum wage. And you get benefits, and you get the car paid, the like benefits like for your car, for your clothes, for your food, everything paid by the government. I don't know how much the president earns, maybe 200K a year or more. Not a year, a month. Sorry. I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy numbers. It's crazy numbers. I'll tell you that. Crazy numbers. While people are getting a minimum wage. So I don't think that's the best thing to do. I think the best thing is to have similar, like whatever you're offering the people, that's what the governance and the politicians should earn as well. If that makes sense. What am I saying? Does it make sense? Because if I'm offering this solution to the people that it's okay with me, then they're gonna fight for bigger wages and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I'm not articulating the best way, but let's go back to the video. Otherwise, this will be an hour-long video.
Holds outsized influence in other areas, mostly, once again, tracing back to its booming energy industry. Particularly after the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Norway is the largest exporter of energy to Europe. However, it's considering restricting the amount of exports to the EU. Of course, the fact that Norway's profits soar because of increased oil demand following increased international conflict is a bit of a touchy subject. Some have accused the country of being a war profiteer, though Norway vehemently denies that accusation, and to be fair, it can't do much about the fact that instability in the world tends to raise oil prices. Worldwide, Norway also ranks fourth in exports of natural gas, as tensions between the West and Russia, particularly the European Union and Russia, continue to rise. The continent's dependence on Norway is likely to increase. In addition, the country's shipping fleet is ranked fourth by value internationally.
Fourth.
But speaking of conflicts, Norway also exerts its influence through its fund to punish nations it deems as breaking international law. After Russia invaded Ukraine, the Norwegian Prime Minister announced that the country's sovereign wealth fund would sell off its Russian assets. Before the war, the fund had shares in 47 Russian companies and government bonds, adding up to a value of $2.8 billion in 2021.
Dang.
The GPFG was one of the largest stakeholders in Sberbank, a major Russian financial institution,
Did they sell
as
all
well
of
as
it?
energy giants Gazprom and Lukoil. Pulling out of those Russian assets contributed to Russia's stock market.
Okay, so it's about double of the average income, Whiplash says. The prime minister receives about double of the average income. That's what I'm saying. In Brazil, it's 100 times more. Like 100 times more. That's crazy. Crazy numbers. Crazy. Crazy numbers. Double is okay, but 100 times more is insane. And that's why, people are less corrupt in Norway. And that's why, like in Brazil, even celebrities, they want to become politicians because that's where the money is. It's not because they want to help the country. It's because it's a position of power and wealth. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane.
One, the
It's
GPFG
a
was one of
joke.
the largest stakeholders in Sberbank, a major Russian financial institution, as well as energy giants Gazprom and Lukoil. Pulling out of those Russian assets contributed to Russia's stock market plunging and the weakening of its economy. Strangely enough, Norway's also using its funds to undermine the very industry that it feeds, oil. One of Norway's goals for the future is to reduce emissions and encourage the implementation of green energy. Norway has taken the stance that climate change now poses a substantial financial risk, in addition to the environmental challenges scientists describe, and it must be dealt with in some way. Though this would undermine one of Norway's premier industries, that's part of the reason why the fund was developed in the first place, so profits from oil and gas can be captured and invested into the country's future, without Norway always needing to
Smart.
rely on oil to stay afloat. The
Smart.
transition has been gradual but steady. In 2016, the GPFG appealed to Parliament to be allowed to exclude companies focused on coal production from its investments. In 2017, the fund said it would be removing around $35 billion of oil and gas stocks from its holdings. This had double the benefit for the fund, as Norway didn't want to be vulnerable to the rapidly fluctuating oil and gas prices, as well as potential permanent drops in price. In 2018, the fund added companies with substantial revenue from coal-fired power production to its list of exclusions. The next year, the GPFG said that companies that only explore and produce oil and gas had to go as well. Now, you may notice that despite all of this, the fund is still heavily invested in Exxon, a company best known for replacing Alaskan seawater with 11 million gallons of oil in 1989. In fact, the fund has drawn criticisms from many for remaining invested in companies that overall impact the environment negatively. However, others argue that the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund is trying to change things from within, as was shown in 2023 with its votes in ExxonMobil and Chevron meetings. GPFG voted against management proposals to re-elect the company's CEO as chairman of the board, adhering to its belief that those two roles should be split. The goal was to prevent one person from holding too much power and influence. And in relation to climate goals, the fund supported shareholder proposals that required Chevron and ExxonMobil to set medium-term Scope 3 greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. It argues that the US-based energy companies have lagged behind their European counterparts like BP and Shell in setting specific targets for emission reduction. Perhaps that's why the fund's equity investments are tilted toward European companies in general. Tufts University studied the fund closely in 2014 and found that the GPFG is a European fund for Europe. The fund has taken a deliberate decision to give preference to investments in European countries and to penalize stakes in North American, especially U.S. companies. It also is possible that European companies are simply more likely to align with the GPFG's
Hi,
guidelines
Napur.
for acceptable corporate behavior. They're often eager to attract investments from the fund. At the same time, they must adhere to the European Union regulations, which already enforce stricter corporate governance and ethical standards. That might signal to companies throughout the world that if they want to attract the attention of the world's largest sovereign wealth fund, their governance should fall in line with the GPFG's guidelines. This way, Norway's fund exercises a form of soft power. In addition, the fund's insane wealth and great return on investment also serve as an example that investment that's guided by some base level of ethics and sustainability can still be incredibly profitable. Remember those bonds we talked about earlier? Well, a full 7.5% of the Norwegian GPFG fund is invested in U.S. government bonds, the largest holding the fund has in any bonds, translating to $136 billion. This may sound irrelevant, but Norway's holdings of government bonds could make countries around the world take its message more seriously. Because
Wow.
the CEO of the Sovereign Wealth Fund, Nicolai Tangen, has been increasingly alarmed about rising national debt levels and has warned countries that they are not doing enough to bring them down. If the GPFG threatens a bond sell-off, this might pressure some countries to do more. In the
That's
meantime,
crazy.
Norway's Sovereign Wealth Fund shows no signs of slowing down on its returns or losing any power. Smart investments have concentrated the GPFG's equity investments in high-performing tech stocks, which led to an 18% return on equity in 2024. Overall, the fund actually gained $95.5 billion in value in just 2024. The value of just its one-year return places it in the top 10 pension funds funds within the US, and there's just under $2 trillion sitting within the fund besides that. So Norway's sovereign wealth fund's sway over corporations and governments worldwide seems like it'll only increase. What that means for business and how much it'll actually affect the course of the world remains to be seen. Did you know that Norway was sitting on this huge heap of wealth? Let us know what surprised you most in the comments below. In the meantime, check out Why is Monaco so rich? Or click on this video instead.
Monaco. Dang. Dang. That is absolutely crazy. That is absolutely insane. I heard somebody say that the best investment now is in gold. Do you guys keep gold as well? Or no? That's crazy. Like the fact that Norway isn't it isn't a big country in comparison to other countries. It's not. But it's so rich. It's sitting in so much power and richness. It's crazy. It's crazy. You have a big pile of gold under your bed? GeoGuessers. The biggest problem with the fund is that politicians use the money to buy influence internationally, not for Norway, but for themselves. I'm not that mad about politician salaries. They are good. They're low compared to other countries. The CEOs of national companies, however, there we have some high salaries. Norway do not keep gold, which I think is a huge problem. Yeah, that's what I was like asking you. Gold is the best the last 6 months, but everything is a bit messed up right now. Politicians are not the problem unless they are corrupt, but employees is in the bureaucracy. Yeah, that's a good thing to hear, that politicians are not the problem, because it shows that you guys trust your politicians and that you guys are doing a good job. Where I'm from, the politicians are mostly the problem, and there's nothing we can actually do to change it, because we can vote, but it's not about the people who we put in there. It's the people who are already there and that we can't get out, you know, which is mostly, I think the biggest problem is the judiciary, the Supreme Court. There's no way, we can't take those people out. There are people who are there for years upon years, 85-year-olds, 90-year-olds, crazy. But anyways, a shout out to Iceland. I see the flag there. Gold is overpriced in general though, but speculative as with everything. Dang. I've heard a lot of Marta. Marta? What does that mean, Marta? Oh, from Marta. Martha. Okay, Marta. Okay. It's another person here on the channel. Anyways, this was longer than I expected. I didn't want to get political. I don't think I did get political because I was talking about politics in general. Maybe. I don't know. I think we could have talked a lot more in this video about every single topic, but I think the big point here is that Norway, you guys are definitely in a good position, and I hope you guys keep doing good for the rest of the world, and you know, use your power responsibly, and I hope that you guys can save the world when it needs to. Anyways, guys, that was a good video. Thank you, Whiplash, for requesting this. And if you want to request any other video, I love these educational videos. It helps me to understand your country better. It helps me, it educates me, because here, this channel is about me discovering new things. It's my Nordic channel, so these are great videos. And if you want to request a video just like Whiplash did, request a video through Buy Me a Coffee. Click over here or click over here, and I'll see you. Take care now. Bye-bye.